श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्त्वनिवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So I didn't realize that being the long weekend, many of the people may not come, but that's okay. You are here. I'm very happy for that. So we'll continue. I believe that next week, which is 24th of this month, the Seva International people had already given us notice because they do some social work here, making sandwiches and so on. So next week we will have an online class only. And of course I think the future of the in-person classes is still being tested. Let us see how many people agree to come. It looks like many of the people that had wanted the in-person classes are not here. So it just means that perhaps we have to reevaluate it. We'll have to look at it. From my perspective, as we were just talking with Kalpana and Bharat earlier, I feel better to teach in person. So if it is possible for some of you to come, that would be better, I think, but we'll have to see. So, this is an advanced, I've made it into an advanced introduction to Vedanta. And what that means, I think, is that it is meant for people that have really been studying Vedanta for a while, all of you. But yet it's a revision of the basic principles of Vedanta that we should always keep in mind. And the basic principles are the most important. So this is really how we should do. So in that sense, as you know very well, that Ishvara's Shrishti has three aspects. So this is what is called, from the standpoint of truth, let's say this is true for all of them. So it is true for Sat, it is true for Chit, and it is also true for Ananda, all three aspects. But let's just take one aspect at a time. Take Sat, for instance. Sat means what is true? What is the truth? What is? This is what Sat means. So Sat has, in Vedanta, three different aspects to it. This is the Ishvara Srishti. This is how he's done it. A very remarkable one. So as you know very well, it is Pratibhasika, Vyavaharika, and Paramarthika. So here, instead of simply saying, okay, I know that, so on and so forth, the advanced introduction means that we must think about the implications and the details of these three levels. It is not trivial. This is where really our understanding can become casual, or it can become very in-depth. So we will look at some examples of how this works. So the first level is what is called Pratibhasika Sat. Pratibhasika Sat means purely subjective from an individualistic standpoint. But really the whole thing is the interplay between the individual and the total. This is what the whole Srishti is all about. We tend to look at things individualistically. And our approach, our conclusions, our way of solving problems are all from the standpoint of the individual, as it should be when we are born, because there is no other way you can look at it. Swami Dayananji used to say that when the baby is born, you are engulfed with total ignorance, total darkness. Everything is taken care of. Actually, it's amazing. The baby in the mother's womb, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Even the eyes are open, and so on. But that is all taken care of without any kind of a knowledge on the part of the baby. We just have a brand new newborn baby, less than 2 months old. So I was talking to my son, and it is really interesting. I mean, just to go through that. We've all had children and grandchildren and so on, but just to revisit what happens there is really fascinating, because when the child is born, you are engulfed with, this is what Swamiji used to say, you are engulfed in total darkness, total ignorance, nothing. And my son was telling me that I didn't realize that for the first 2 weeks, the baby is not really focused on anything. The eyes are open. It is only focused on its hunger. I want milk. That is the most important thing. And there is nothing, that is a very natural thing given to the baby. But you open the eyes, you're not looking at anything. So that means that the individuality has not yet come into force. It is an automatic thing. So for a couple of weeks, they cannot even focus. And I guess the scientific evidence is that you don't see colors. You're all black and white in the beginning. And just yesterday, my son was telling me that now Arjun, the new baby, is now starting to move his eyes, look at people, hints of smile. So what it means is that individuality is now coming into being. So all of our life we view from the standpoint of myself as an individual, which is natural and proper. What else can you do? You cannot do anything else. Slowly, our growth should be, and it isn't. This is the problem. Our growth from birth to death is only from the standpoint of individuality. The real growth comes in when you embrace something beyond individuality. This is where the really growth comes in. And that is the purpose of life. The reason we are really born is so that you go beyond individuality into totality. Because that is where the real freedom is. There is no real freedom in individuality. So back to the three levels of Sat. Starting with the Pratibhasika, Vyavaharika and Paramarthika. The first two are relevant to individuality. And the first two have a variation. So Pratibhasika means, and this is how the creation is, that you have something individualistic but private to yourself. Your thoughts, your attitudes, your feelings are only known to you. We can gather some evidence from it. If you are frowning, that means that you are not very happy at the moment. So that expression is available for others to see, but it is really more of a guesstimation. But what your thoughts are, etc., what you think about yourself, about the world, is totally. This is what is called Pratibhasika Sat. So it's a form of Sat in the sense that your thoughts, your attitudes are there for you. You cannot say they are not there. Ultimately, we will see that it is really not there. But for the time being, and in fact, you know what it is, if you look at it, it's very interesting. In our life, if you were to divide 100% of your life in terms of which one is Pratibhasika, which one is Vyavaharika, which one is Paramarthika. Paramarthika is 0. Until some teaching takes place, it is 0. So that is a 0%. Now we have got two left, Pratibhasika and Vyavaharika. Our acharyas say, believe it or not, a majority of your life is spent in Pratibhasika. Vyavaharika means, dealing with people and perhaps even food and body consciousness. So it's there. You cannot say that. It's not a small percentage. But really speaking, if you were to analyze your life, it's all about your thoughts and all about your feelings, all about your conclusions about yourself, all about am I happy, am I unhappy, all private. We are walking around with our own view of what the world is. So this is what is called Pratibhasika Sat. Okay? Then, of course, we have the Vyavaharika Sat, because this is how the Srishti is, that you're now dealing with a level of truth which is more solid, and also solid in the sense that it is common between people. You're also looking at me, the other persons are also looking at me, I'm also looking at you, and so this is not private, this is public. So the public Sat is also there, necessary. About food, security, fun in life, music, all those things are Vyavaharika Sat. So they are there, no doubt about it. But the Vyavaharika Sat also is as should be pointed out, is also from a standpoint of an individual. You may have thoughts and you may have attitudes, you may have conclusions. The same thing that is common for everyone can be individualized by your own attitudes. So whether or not it should be a Democrat government or a Republican government is purely up to you. There is a government, there is some governance, but how you look at it is your choice altogether. Anyway, this is what is called Vyavaharika Sat. Then for the students of Vedanta, we come to Paramarthika Sat. So what is Paramarthika Sat? So as you know by now, this is an introduction, but an advanced introduction. You all know this by now. We were just giving some additional commentary on it. Paramarthika Sat means one which is not conditional. Because the Vyavaharika and the Pratibhasika Sat obviously are conditional. Depends on who it is, what your background is, all of that. By the way, I should just interrupt myself by saying that in these series of classes that we are going to take before we take a text, which is, I just sort of thought of it by calling it Advanced Introduction to Vedanta, is something that I really recommend that you find an opportunity to teach someone else. You should be able to follow the structured way of this introduction up to a point where you can explain this clearly to someone else. Please do that. How it is, I don't know, it's up to you. It could be a friend, it could be a child, it could be something, not a child, but relatively young person, or to a neighbor. It's all up to you. But I think if you take good notes on this, this provides you with a comprehensive, if not complete, introduction to what the elements of Vedanta is. This is the way I think we should approach it. Anyway, going back to Paramarthika Sat. So the Paramarthika Sat means unconditional truth, because the other two are conditional truths. So what do you mean by unconditional truth? Conditional truth means what is regardless of anything else. So then the only question our mind poses is there any such thing? Is that possible? This is where the inquiry has to start and end. Yes, it is not only possible, it is already there. So in Vedanta they say, Trikala abadhitam. Trikala abadhitam. Trikala means the three periods of time, past, present, and future. You can even say in any other kind of situations, however you define your life to be, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for the truth to be defined that way. The truth has its independent definition regardless of the viewpoint from which you are viewing. Is it a past? Is it present? Is it the future? And we will see how in just 1 minute. But I'm just giving you Oh, there's some glue here. I said, what's happening here? So now the next section here is what we need to really think about. This is a very important section, and for advanced introduction, this is a key thing. Okay? In fact, I would introduce it in another way. In the Vedic thinking, in Vedas, in Vedanta, it is said that the search for Ishvara, the search for God, must start and end with yourself. And almost all of our Upanishads, with very few exceptions, start with the self for a very good reason that we will see now. There are very few Upanishads, like Ishavasya is one of them, where you say Ishvara is everywhere. It ends up to being the same thing, but you can start someplace. But really speaking, all of the Upanishads, you look at Kathopanishad, you look at Kenopanishad, Taittiriya, all of them. And so the general advice given by the Shastra is that if you are looking at the Paramarthika Sat, and if you're looking at, because Paramarthika Sat means Ishvara. How do we mean Ishvara as a Paramarthika Sat? Because even for a layman in the sense, an ordinary simple person, samsari, if you were to ask him to define Ishvara, they will define Ishvara as total, complete, happy, and the boss of everything. Completeness, purnatvam, sarvagatatvam. Isn't that? That's how you define Ishvara. Always there. So Paramarthika Sat. This is a definition of Ishvara that we would start with in our minds. We may not be scholars, we may not have studied anything, but you cannot even define God as someone who is deficient in any way. That being the case, the question is, where do you start looking for that Ishvara? And this is what we've been saying in the last couple of classes. If you know, I'll revise it and consolidate it. If Ishvara is complete and it is sarvagataha, always, somewhere, everywhere, it's always everywhere, should it not include you? It must. Because otherwise you're violating the very principles of your search. It's like saying, I want to go east, but you're going west. Hey, why are you going west? You should be going east. So this is a clear violation. So you cannot say that so the search for the truth, the Paramarthika's truth, must be me. Because otherwise you are violating the very definition of Ishvara. This is what I've been saying the last couple of classes. Okay, so now let us define what are the possibilities of Paramarthika Sat, or the definition of God. Let's look at it, all possibilities. One possibility is that it is not true, cannot be. There is no such thing as always there, because all I see are things that are changing. I don't see something which is always there. So maybe there isn't anything which is always there. Shastra says no. That's not true. It is there. So don't go into that essentially I'm trying to free myself, and I go into some areas where it looks like it's free, but it's a dead end. This is a dead end. Don't go there. You don't need to go there. You might as well don't discard that view that it is not there. Okay. Then the other view is it is there, but somewhere else. Not me, because I'm an individual. I've got my own issues, and I don't want to wish it on even an Ishvara. I know that Ishvara is very complete, happy, and so on, but not me. So, this gets violated. This is also not true, because for the same reason that we've just gone through. So the first one is the Paramarthika Sat is not there. Second one is the Paramarthika Sat is there but not me. The only other conclusion left is it is me, but I am mixed up. I am somewhat confused. How can it be me? This is the right direction. This Vedanta is saying, discard the other ones, but follow this. And then the Vedanta in the very beginning, Shastra in the very beginning gives us this view that, listen, there is a difference between experience without knowledge and an experience with knowledge. This is exactly what is happening to you. Everything is an experience. But what can happen is that certain experiences are devoid of the truth of the experience, and some experiences can still be the same, but they are now knowledgeable experience. Very clearly we know the rising of the sun. In the introduction to Vedanta, Swamiji's book, this was really pointed out. It's a very beautiful book. And one of our American students, Barbara, who was with us in the PRC course, she co-wrote that book with Swamiji. And to this day, Swamiji feels that if you need to give somebody this small booklet as an introduction, Swamiji has two favorite books that he would always keep. I've seen him when was he in Coimbatore or someplace. He would have some spare copies of these two books. One is the Introduction to Vedanta, and the other one is Value of Values. These are the two classic books that he really liked. So in this book, Introduction to Vedanta, this point is pointed out very, very deliberately. exhaustively, not deliberately, but exhaustively. And so there it says that the rising sun is an experience which is equally true for a 2-year-old and equally true for a 12-year-old. But the difference is that the 2-year-old doesn't know that the sun doesn't rise. The 12-year-old knows that the sun does not rise. It is just the movement of the earth. So the experience remaining the same, the interpretation is entirely different depending upon your knowledge. So is the situation with, if Ishvara is me, how is it that I don't understand it? So Shastra says, my dear, it is because you are only focused on the experience and not the experience with knowledge. When you are focused on experience, which is understandable, relatable, forgivable, just like a baby, 2-year-old baby, to say that the sun rises, you cannot say you are stupid. Don't you know that the sun doesn't rise? If somebody says that, then that person is stupid. You cannot say that to the baby you are stupid. It's not stupid. That's what it says. So similarly, for me to know that Ishvara is not me is not stupid. It's just ignorant. That's all. It requires some further analysis and study. That's all. Okay. So now comes the important statement. We're talking about Paramarthika Sat. Can you see, can you feel, do you know that out of all possibilities of Paramarthika Sat, you are the only one which is Paramarthika Sat? And you'll say, who, me? And we don't mean you with this form of body-mind. We don't mean that. You. So when you say you can say, I want you to do this. The question is, who do we mean? It could be that I ask you to please move from there to here, in which case I'm pointing out to your body. Or if I ask you, do you understand? I am referring to your mind, your ability to think. So you're looking at not the Sthula Sharira, but the Sukshma Sharira. But here, when we say you are the Paramarthika Sat, I am not referring to either Sukshma Sharira or Sthula Sharira or Karana Sharira. No Sharira. You are the Paramarthika Sat. How am I the Paramarthika Sat? How is that possible? This is just an amazing fact. Do you know that other than you, nothing else fulfills the definition of Paramarthika Sat? Nothing else. They all fail the test. Trikala abhaditam satyam. The past fails the test because it is not there now. We have got a very clear definition of what is Paramarthika Sat. Means always there, regardless. Can the past always be there? By definition, no. The future hasn't even arrived. The present also is changing. But do you know something? You are not changing. You are the Sat, the only Sat there is. There is no other Sat. I am, I am. What you are may be different, but you are. And we are talking about only Sat. We'll deal about Jnanam and Anandam later. We're talking about Satyam only. Just look at Satyam. Don't you see this? This is an amazing fact. You are the Sat. You're the only one that can fulfill that definition. Everything else fails. Governments come and governments go. Families come and go. Spouses come and go. Mothers and fathers come and go. You are always there. The only thing you can think of is in the previous life you were not there. That's your conjecture. You as the Sat was always there. Not possibility for you to disappear because it is unconditional. It's not depending on Sukshma Sharira or Sthula Sharira or anything. You are the Paramarthika Sat. But because I am confused, no one told me this very clearly, then you tend to look at yourself conditionally. That's fine. You are not stupid. Just like a 2-year-old is not stupid. It just doesn't know, that's all. But know it. And yes, there is a little bit delay involved because you and I have spent millions of lives, not just one or two, millions of lives in looking at myself as an individual. In the Mandukya Karika, these texts are just amazing. The Mandukya Upanishad itself is very amazing. Sri Gaudapadacharya's the commentary is amazing. And then you have a Mahatma like Swami Akhandananda ji or some other people. Their commentary on the thing is even more amazing. There was one thing that Swami Akhandananda pointed out, which was really, you don't think about it as much until somebody says it. Then you ponder over it and you say, oh my gosh, how come I didn't see this? So, what he was talking about, as you know, which we will take up, I think, one of these days, is that the dream and the waking are very similar. They are 99.9% similar, 0.1% different. Should you not be looking at similarity rather than the difference? And yet they appear to be very different. Why? So Akhandananda ji points out, and I think a lot of other acharyas do too, but I just happen to see this, and he says, the reason the dream appears to be less real then the waking state is because being pratibhasika sat, it doesn't repeat itself very long. So the experiences are similar, but because you are not doing it over and over and over again, it tends to disappear very quickly. In the waking state, the confusion comes in because the apparent experience seems to be very stable. Why is it very stable? Because of the vyavaharika sat. You have a spouse. You have some children. They were there yesterday also. They were there today. And hopefully they will be there tomorrow. So it looks like there is some reality to it when there isn't. I read someplace, I think, I don't remember where, that Adi Shankara was telling his mother, "Mom, can I tell you something? I have had moms like you many times in my life, in different lives." But she was wailing about the fact that you left me and you're going around teaching and this, that, or the other. I thought you were going to be my son. And so, as a sannyasi, he was teaching his mom. This is what I've seen in some of the writings. And he says, "Mother, it's good that you gave me birth. I'm very grateful to you. But the fact of the matter is, I've had millions of mothers that I have left. And if I don't see this very clearly, I'll have a million more mothers that I would also leave." So this sense of reality, this is how it happens. It's because you are, it's something like you have, I don't know, maybe not a good example. You just have a little single coat of paint which disappears. But if you keep on doing it again and again and again, it becomes very solid. But there is really no reality to it. So the reason I'm bringing it all up is that unlike a 2-year-old who has now become a 12-year-old, where the explanation of the sun doesn't rise doesn't take more than a class or two. Unlike that, we've got some issues because even though we feel, yeah, this looks good, I am the Paramarthika Sat. Yes, what the teachers told me appears to be, but your mind comes up and it says, "Oh no." It covers it up right away. And it takes a while for you to confront your mind and hold on to the truth. Anyway, coming back to it, you can see that from the standpoint of Sat, you are the Sat. So this is also another way of looking at it, that if you look at the 3 basic aspects of Paramatma, Atma, Jivatma, all the same, we just have some words to describe it. If you look at the 3 aspects of it, all 3 of them are aparoksha. All 3 of them are aparoksha. So we went through this very briefly in the last couple of classes regarding Ananda, Sukham. That please see this, that whenever there is a Sukham that happens to you, not outside of you. Outside of you, you can sort of infer. If somebody is really singing songs and this, that, or the other, and very happy, and so it's very nice to say, I'm glad that you are happy. Is there everything okay? It must be everything would be okay. You can infer it. But you don't know that happiness. You don't know how happy somebody is. You don't know that. The only way to experience happiness is within you. This is called aparoksha anubhuti. Similarly, the Sat is also aparoksha only. See this very clearly. This is not talked about as clearly in my feeling is. The Sat can only be experienced aparoksha, as an aparoksha. It is you. And be a scientist. Scientist in the sense that be very precise. What else fulfills Sat? Tell me. Propose this to your mind. Nothing else does. And the Sat, which is Paramarthika Sat, which is you, also doesn't need to be proven. It is Swayam Siddha. Swayambhu. One of the words for Paramatma is Swayambhu. Swayam bhavati iti Swayambhu. There is you. There is no other Ishvara, there is no other Brahman other than you. Can there be? That's impossible. It's not even a possibility. It doesn't even fulfill the very definition. Only thing that fulfills the definition is you. Aparoksha. This is what is called Paramarthika Sat. And this requires just some knowledge, some understanding. That's it. Now, with that, the experiences are completely different. Just like if a 12-year-old, the experience is the same, but the interpretation is completely different. So this is what is called, this is what I'm saying, that from the standpoint of the Sat, which is Pratibhasika, Vyavaharika and Paramarthika, it all ends up in you. In the, I don't know if you've all studied this beautiful text called Advaita Makaranda. Really? You have not? So we have to take that text. Swami Viditatmananda had taught us in one of the retreats, and it has then turned out into a book. This is an author is called Lakshmidhara Kavi. Beautiful author, beautiful book. In the second verse of that text, there is a verse which has become very popular and often quoted. It goes like this. Ahamasmi sada bhami kadachit naha apriyaha brahmaiva aham atassiddham satchidananda lakshanam. Anybody has heard this? Okay, this is good to know because then I might actually teach it. So that would be it's beautiful. Aham asmi sada bhami kadachit naha aham apriyaha brahma eva aham siddha Satchidananda Lakshana. This verse is explaining the same thing that I have been talking about. Well, we can spend a few minutes just discipline. If you get a copy of this Advaita Makaranda, just go through the second verse and just look at it. So it says, Aham asmi, I am. Sada bhami. So this is the jnanam, the chit aspects of myself. Because the sat and the chit are inseparable. You cannot be without knowing. And you cannot know without being. And the only thing there is the confusion about Ananda. So the Ananda also you already are. But that requires a little bit, as we've been studying in the Tuesday night class, that requires some more analysis. So the Ananda is the slowest one to come. Sat is the easiest. The next one is Jnanam, which we will be studying. Then comes Ananda. And so here, Lakshmidhara's Kavi says, Aham asmi. You can say Aham sada asmi, but you don't need to say sada asmi. You are. Sada bhami. So you can do sada for both sat as well as bhami. Bhami means I am aware. Kadachit naham apriya. I am never unhappy with myself. Never. So this requires a lot of explanation. How can you say that I am never unhappy with myself? Because my experience is that I am unhappy with myself. So there the explanation is, you are unhappy with your Sukshma Sharira and your Sthula Sharira, not with yourself. So that also is a confusing thing. In fact, it is said that people who commit suicide don't like what they are going through. So this is a very important thing to see. You cannot make a distinction, you cannot make a conclusion rather, not distinction. You cannot make a determination that I don't like what I am going through unless you have a comparison. You see, this is very important. So even in the act of suicide, there is in fact a conclusion that that's not me. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. There must be something better. I don't know what it is, but this is not acceptable to me. I'm going to end my life. So this is what Shri Kavi is saying. Kadachit naham apriyaha. I am never not acceptable to myself. Unconditionally. You may not like something else, but the very sat. And so this also is aparoksha. Ananda is also aparoksha. As it is, sukham is also aparoksha. So anyway, so those are the three aspects of it. that we must examine. And so the beautiful Srishti of Ishvara in terms of Pratibhasika Sat, Vyavaharika Sat and Paramarthika Sat must be taken to its end. That I alone can be the Paramarthika Sat. Oh yeah, so this is the other thing I took off. There was something that Swayambhu. Swayambhu means that it's not as though I have to prove that I am. As we have talked about this is ludicrous to go to a doctor and say, "Can you please tell me if I am?" Doctor says, I can't help you, but there is a mental hospital that you should immediately register yourself. So this is an important thing. It's laughable, but it's an important thing. I never prove myself where I am. What I have to prove is what I am. I'm not happy. That's okay. I'm lonely. Okay, that we can deal with. But in all of my experiences, I am. And then you have a suffix. I am lonely. I am happy. I am unhappy. I am troubled. But I am. This is what is called Paramarthika Sat. And there is nothing else other than you that can be Paramarthika Sat. So now we come to the second line of this verse. Ahamasmi sadabhami kadachit na aham apriyaha. Never am I not in love with myself. Never. Even if I feel that something is not right to me, it is relation to the fact that I know I am better than this. First line. Now comes the second line. Brahma eva aham. Brahmaiva. What is it? Brahmaiva. Yeah. Brahmaiva aham atasiddham. Satchidananda Lakshanam. This is the second line. Brahma eva aham atasiddham. You know what this means? This is a Mahavakya. Mahavakya. Tat Tvamasi. He says, because I am always there, Sadabhami, I am Ananda, this is the definition of Ishvara. Isn't it? Ishvara's definition is, Ishvara means Brahman. Because Ishvara has another aspect to that. We will actually go into that if we have enough time. What is the time? 9:31. Okay. So maybe another 15 minutes. So, a very minor difference between the word Ishvara and Brahman. But, so it says, Brahman eva aham atasiddham. So look at the truth of this. That the definition of Brahman is, or Ishvara as we talked about earlier, is always there, always aware, and totally happy, complete. This is the definition of Brahman. That is my definition. There cannot be any difference between them. Atasiddham means it is now proven. Do you need any other proof? Other than just thinking about it, that's it. There's no, that is also not a proof. That is simply thinking about the proof. It is proven. Paramarthika Sat is me. There cannot be anything else. Brahma eva aham atassiddham Satchidananda Lakshanam. This is a beautiful word, Satchidananda Lakshanam. So the word Lakshanam in Sanskrit means one which is unique to itself. There is nothing like that is called Lakshanam. Lakshana means what are the characteristics that singularly and uniquely defined a vastu that no other thing has. It's called Lakshanam. So everything has a Lakshanam. Even as an individual, we have a name, we have parentage, we have gender, all of those kinds of things. This is my Lakshanam, name. Here, the Lakshanam of Brahman is Aham asmi sadabhami kadachit naham apriyaha. This is the Lakshanam of Brahman. Can that be different than Lakshanam of me? Cannot be. Because I will be talking from two sides with two tongues. I'll be lying if I were to say, oh, that is Ishvara's Lakshanam, that's not me. Then we can call you idiotic. If you don't know this, then we cannot call you idiotic. But if you know this and you still deny into it, Swami Maheshananda ji, and really all the Swamis say this. Swamis say, Swami Akhandananda also, they say that the study of Vedanta is not that difficult. Not difficult. Because it requires a certain availability of a teacher who has gone through this. So, and then it means that you should be prepared to come to a class. It's not that difficult. This is okay. What is difficult, which takes a lifetime, unfortunately. It can take a lifetime, is to deal with your own doubts about it. So Maheshananji has this very, where was it? I think I've forgotten, I've written some of his books, I think it might have been in Rudram or I don't know where it was. So he says that there was a person who was just watching a lake, and it was windy and there was a tree on the side of the lake, and a leaf fell from a tree because of the wind, and instantly it became a bird. The leaf became a bird and flew away. So this person said, how can that be? This is something strange going on. I don't understand this. He closed his eyes, and the next thing he knows, he's hanging upside down with a rope inside a huge cave, which is dark. And he opens his eyes and he sees there are hundreds of other people who are also hanging upside down, very uncomfortable, in this cave. So he says, how did I get here? What's going on? So he asked his neighbor, he says, who are we? Who are you? What's happening here? He says, you know what? These are special places meant for doubters. Anybody that doubts is brought in here. Swamiji says, really speaking, this is the difficulty. Initially, you will all get an introduction and you will be okay with it. Oh, that's wonderful, 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 wonderful. Okay, so all right, so what's next? But here are my experiences. I'm not happy, this, that, or the other. And and then Swamiji used to say that even the doubt about the existence of God, that's something, these are the amazing things. Swamiji said, I still remember his talk, Swami Maheshananji. He says, look at this. You have a little embryo born in your mother's tummy that grows into a baby and is totally ignorant, as we talked about, needs complete help night and day for months together. 20 years later, that same baby tells his father, you don't know anything. You have not given me the right education. This is something very common. I'm sure that many of you may have experienced. We have our kids go to piano lessons for years, and finally they said, no, I don't want to do this. Then you say, okay, fine. 20 years later, they blame you and say, why didn't you force me to go out a little bit further? My friends are such good ones. So we said, you didn't want it. He says, just because I didn't want it, why didn't you keep on forcing me? Swami Maheshananji says, is this not a wonder? This is God's creation. Why are you doubting it that there is a God? Swami Dayanand used to say that. He says, you know what? I am past admiring the macrocosmic creation of God, that there are stars and moons and galaxies, the infinite number of stars. He says, that one I was already aware of and admired it, and I said, my goodness, who must have done this? He says, what really makes me admire is the microcosmic creation of Ishvara. Microcosmic Ishvara means electrons, protons, and the existence of either strings or no strings, energy, mass, how everything is moving in a circle. He says, that really just amazes me. That even a solid looking table, as we have talked about it many times, is nearly not solid. There's a lot of movement going on. He says, what a Shrishti there is. Anyway, so what it really means is that Paramarthika Sat being me, I am sure you understand this. No one is, we can have a satsang session where you say, I don't get it. We can do that. But I think you all get it. What you need to do is to remove your doubts about it, how it works. You should be in wonder about it. My goodness, how is this possible? That I alone am the Paramarthika Sat. Each one of us is the same Paramarthika Sat. It's not different. I. That I which is never born. Swayambhu. This is what Paramarthika Sat means from the standpoint of Sat alone. Okay, should I start on this? Let me just do one thing. Okay, so I think what I will do is to go to this related topic in a very short time and then expand on it next time. Because I don't have time to completely go through this today. But let me at least introduce it to you. And also we have already talked about it in the last class, so it's not something completely new. But nevertheless, this particular aspect of this teaching, let me give you a small introduction. So, what it means is, we have talked about it in the last class, Upadhana Karana. This is the topic, Upadhana Karana. So it is very clear that there are certain models of creation that I am familiar with. And so the question is that this creation of Ishvara, now we can go back to Ishvara as the very creator. What model of the creation there is? So there we saw that the model of creation is not, if you recall what we talked about, which is called Vyapaka Vyapya Sambandha. It is not like the light of the sun lighting up different objects. That is also part of the creation, but this model does not fit that model completely. Instead, what it fits in is something we're familiar with, where you have, like water in a wave, where you can say it is a Vyapaka Vyapya Sambandha. You can say that this is a something which is the very basis of the wave, but the wave is not different from the water. It is simply a way of expressing it. So this kind of a model where we have clay and pots, water and waves, and even Akasha and room Akasha is the one that we should follow. Okay? This is what it is being done. But then here there is a subset of this model which needs to be understood. What do you mean by the subset of the model? What it means is that, consider this, in the case of the clay and the pots, both the Upadana Karanam, which is clay, which is called the material cause, Upadana means a material cause. The material for the pots is clay. Both the material as well as its expression as a pot are visible to you. This one you can easily appreciate. But we have a difference, because the clay also is a created vastu. The pot also is a modification of the clay, which is a experienced vastu. Both of them are experienced by you. But here, I don't see the upadhanam as Brahman. I don't see it. It's not visible to me. So, how can I accept that Brahman is the upadana karana? How can I accept that? Because it is nowhere where it is not. In the case of a clay, there are other places where the clay is not. So it's something very specific. But in the case of Brahman, as you say, it is Paramarthika Sat. How do I know that? Where is it? I can't see this Upadana, Karanam and the Karyam. This is the topic that we will spend more time on in the next class. But you already saw the clue to this model with Akasha. This is why they say that the Akasha is the closest thing that comes to you. Because we saw the example, and I'll repeat it next time, that in the Akasha you cannot see the Akasha, but you can see the expression of the Akasha in the form of blueness, in the form of pollution, in the form of darkness. In the darkness also there is Akasha, but you don't see the Akasha. So its disappearance also you can feel. And certainly its expressions you can feel. You can see clouds in it. You can see blueness in it. So this is an example that we must see very clearly. And this is what the next topic will be. That how can I see the Upadana Karanam when I cannot see it? And here we will go through an explanation of this from Kena Upanishad. We briefly looked into that in Tuesday night class in some of them, but I think we will bring it in here to see the explanation of the Upadana Karanam, which is the same as the Paramarthika Sat, in terms of Brahman. So that will be a topic we will go into the next class. So with that, let me close the class today with a prayer. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadai Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Questions?
Yeah. One class ago, you said that the word prajnanam is referenced in Mandukya.
Correct.
You said that you're going to talk about it. There was a question by one of these classmates here.
So there's a couple of things that I remember about it, but of course, in the next few classes, we're going to close the loop on prajnanam. So I'm going to talk a lot about it. But what particular thing were you thinking?
I didn't understand the question completely, but how prajnanam was referenced in that mantra of Mandukya.
Oh no, so that was different. So I know the question now. Pardon me. In Mandukya, it says in the 7th verse of the Mandukya, where you say na antah prajnana bahish prajna, there it says na prajnana ganam. Na prajnana ganam. I am not the prajnana ganam. It says that in that verse, right? So there were a couple of people, including Surendra and I think Ashish Asthana. They remembered the reference from the Mandukya and say, how can it say that I am not that? Okay? So the answer to that was, it doesn't say na prajnanam, it says na prajnana ghanam. So the word ghanam changes it completely. So we can talk about it in more detail, but very briefly to answer your question. In the prajnana ghanam, which you can verify by the explanation by Adi Shankara as the commentary on Mandukya, refers to the deep sleep state, not to the prajnanam which is common to everything, not the turiya, but it is just the deep sleep state. How that is the case, then there requires some more definition. So it is resolved that there is no conflict between that. Yeah, that's all. But as far as the prajnanam itself goes, this is the main topic. We haven't even come to that yet. So we will look into that in much more detail, probably in the next class itself. Yeah.
Vijayji, so I am always there. I hope you are going to get clarity on that going forward, especially before the birth and after the birth.
So the question is that we need some clarity about I'm always there, especially before the birth and after the birth. So can we clarify that? Yes, I think we will do that. So very briefly, to give you an idea of what the way to look at that would be, is that if you understand the Sat Swarupa, Sat Swarupatvam of the Atma, the Paramarthika Sat, and you see that it is unconditional. We will go into more detail, so I'm not giving you the complete understanding of this. You will see that it is not dependent on time. It is independent of time. Right now, I cannot see how can I be independent of time. Because, and the reason for that doubt is that immediately my mind conceives of myself only as an individual, not as the total. So this is what we need to really clarify in our mind, that my individuality is temporary. It is not the real me. It is a superimposition, very much like you are a dreamer in the dream. Yes, you are a dreamer in the dream and you actually go through a lot of experiences, but that is just a temporary superimposition on the real you. The real you is, in this context, independent of time and space. If that is the case, then it doesn't make sense for me to even doubt that I was there before the birth. There is no birth for me. That needs to be thought about, and we will do that, discuss that.
I'm expecting some example like clay and ore. Even the clay is, you said, it's
Quite
not
right.
there always, right?
Quite right.
So it's something very simple so that people can relate and
Quite
understand
right.
that.
So the question is that he's expecting something like the clay and the pots, which is only ekadesha, as they say, ekadesha means only particular. Here, if it is completely without any form, how can it be without any? Yeah, that we will go into more detail. Okay.
We spoke about dream and the waking state,
Yeah.
and one of the things you mentioned is we resonate or remember waking state more because of the repetition
Correct.
and the existence.
Yeah.
Our dream state also repeats every day for a similar period, if not exactly the same. And the experience of what we really say is the ultimate, Ishwara's like presence when we feel, like when we feel that oneness, right? So why the dream state, irrespective of experiencing it every day, is not becoming the prominent experience? Like, why don't we have, I understand the bondage and likes and dislikes
Yeah.
and all that is causing, but I'm also similarly experiencing without any bondage experience every night. But that is not becoming like a prominent part of my week, like in my waking state experience. My prominent experience still goes with the waking state experience.
Okay.
So
So Poonam's question is that how is it that the dream, unlike the waking state, even though I have the same experiences there, similar, not same, but similar experiences there, how does it not become a prominent part of my life, just like the waking state is? Isn't that basically? So yeah, I think that this is what the pratibhasika and the vyavaharika comes into the picture. So in the pratibhasika, you have a way of undergoing experiences that are highly individualistic to you and do not get repeated in your transactions in life. These are just your subjective view of who you are with your thoughts and so on. So you have still the same subjectivity to it, but that subjectivity is not very powerful because, first of all, you don't have the necessity for repeating it, as you do when you have children and neighbors and so on. So we will see this in more detail, but really the entire life is nothing but a set of imaginations which has no reality to it. But these dream imaginations are even worse than the other ones because they're not repeated again and again. You may have some recurring thoughts, like for example in the dreams that I have, my recurring thoughts are that I am trying to reach some place and having difficulty reaching it. This is what really happens to me. But very interestingly enough, even though my thoughts remain the same, which is that I am having difficulty reaching what it is, but the details vary. So and sometimes I will see that I knock on the door on the 9th floor of somebody. This happens to me sometimes. When I go there, I find that the door number is 788, not 9. So I said, how did that happen? I thought I was going on the 9th floor. Very strange. Some other time I will go into a mountain and somebody says, if you go on this direction, you will find it. When I go there, there's nothing there. So it's not the same floor, same mountain. There's some differences, even though the expressions of what I'm looking for is an indication of my own life. That I'm trying to make sure that I am the Paramarthika Sat, and I'm still struggling to see how that is. And it's getting easier, but it's still a search. So the search remaining the same, the expressions are all different. In the case of the transactions of life, they are further aided by its repeatability. Same house, same job, same spouse, same children. Whereas in the dream, they are slightly different. So they don't have the same degree of repeatability. So something like that in that range. Yeah. All right, very good. So I think Raj was telling me that this place is not available next week on the 24th. So we will not have a in-person class. I will ascertain it and send you a WhatsApp message with it.